Wow. Wow, what a fantastic turnout on the coldest, dampest, bitterest night so far this week, I think, isn't it? I can't thank you enough for coming tonight, I really can't. It's absolutely fantastic. I'm Nick Corston. I'm just a dad, so no tricky questions, please. We've got some very clever people in the room tonight from a number of different areas. I'm just a dad who watched this TED Talk by Ken Robinson. Very contentious. I get a lot of stick for even putting that slide up. A lot of people think that means that it devalues literacy. Well, in fact, we're saying literacy is important. Let's celebrate creativity. Let's celebrate creativity and its ability to engage children, to innovate business, and connect communities. And I think tonight we've certainly done the latter. And there are a lot of people in this room today who've devoted their lives, their careers, their days and nights to doing the former, engaging and inspiring our children. I think what we're demonstrating tonight is a community coming together in a belief in education, the status quo or some tweaks or some changes, whatever, but at least to have a conversation, to care enough to stop and think and talk to somebody else and share those thoughts and those feelings. I watched a TED Talk. I read half a book by this bloke, Guy Claxton. Guy Claxton said to me, he said, as educators, as teachers, and as a community, we have a responsibility to our children to help them understand what they want to be good at and to help them pursue that dream. And what we're doing with STEAMCO is we're bringing communities together. We're bringing parents, we're bringing dads together like this to run STEAMCO days. We're running workshops with people from Ford and dads coming together with their tools, a mum there teaching children to play ukulele, an elderly lady there doing rocket making with children. Some dads here on an estate in Bexley that has got bullet holes in the windows where people shoot at children. Parents coming in, working with their children to inspire them with creativity. Just before Christmas, I heard the James O'Brien show, and he was interviewing prison officers. And James O'Brien said to him, do you know what? Nobody cares about prisons and what goes on in prisons. Nobody cares about politics. We've seen that this year, really. They don't think about it enough to care. And nobody gives a damn about education, he said as well. Why don't we start a campaign to save the baby hedgehog? Aren't they lovely? If you started a campaign for the baby hedgehog, the videos would be #1 on YouTube. The Daily Mail and the Sun and all the newspapers would put it on the front, and everybody would have something to distract themselves from the reality of what really is going on in this country. And I presented this at the National Union of Teachers, first time I've ever been in a room of union teachers or unionised room of any sort. And I put that up and I said, teachers don't need a flipping union. You need a PR agency. You do. It's not, I wish it was funny. I'm glad I made you laugh, I really am. You need a PR agency. Teachers are not marketing experts. And, you know, I think that is absolutely key. You need people like John Williams working with you, people like Mark Earls, who's done some work with us, people who understand the media, who can make these messages and get them out. I'd like to take a little bit of indulgence. I'd just like to show you a film for just 2 minutes that shows you all this stuff coming together.
Today we're having the most wonderful day at St Helens College in Hillingdon. We have STEAMCO who've come along to inspire the whole community. We have parents coming from the outside. We've got lots of teachers involved. What can I say? Creativity inspired by all these amazing opportunities we're giving the children today.
No, I'm not the teacher, I'm just the maintenance manager.
The C5 cars are learning about those electronic cars, what was in the past, what could be in the future. We've been talking about Teslas. We have got ukuleles been learned how to play, but not only playing ukuleles, recording and seeing the whole recording process. We've had a rocket launch, which the children went wild for. They will never ever forget today. What really inspired me to bring STEAMCO in here today was one of our ex-students, Josh Ballman, spoke to the children about his most memorable day at St Helens College, and that was when he was in reception, he launched a rocket. And as soon as he said that, I thought, STEAMCO, STEAMCO, rocket launch, and here we are today having our own rocket launch. Josh, I hope you do see this video because you've inspired lots of people, and now STEAMCO are inspiring, and we need to continue inspiring our young children.
STEAMCO Days, bringing communities together. I don't know if you know the story with this book, but my dad's 80 odd now. He volunteers in an Oxfam bookshop, and he gave me this book, and he said it's the best book I've ever read. Rocket Boys is the story of 4 boys growing up in a dead-end coal mining town in the 50s in West Virginia, Homer Hickam. They saw the Sputnik go by in the October sky. It inspired them. The support of the mother, the support of a teacher, they started making rockets. A year later, they'd made one that went 6 miles high in the sky. Homer Hickam went on to work for NASA. Now, if that's not a story of aspiration and invention, of family, of determination, of community coming together to innovate itself out of a problem, I don't know what is. Homer Hickam gave us the rights to this book, and we're now taking this story into every primary school in the UK, together with rocket-making activities to tell the UK about STEAMCO and to get those communities united together. Books like this, The Fourth Industrial Revolution by Klaus Schwab from the World Economic Forum, talks about a world that's unlike anything we've ever seen before. We have to educate our children for this world. We have to give them the skills. Creativity isn't arts and crafts. It's about creative thinking and doing new ways of working, collaborating, sharing, innovating, making, doing, inspiring. Shirley there mentioned a young chap called Josh Valman. Josh Valman was at school. When he was 15, he was watching the Robot Wars TV program. He was making stuff on the internet and sending it off to China to get it made. He left school before he got to sixth form. He never went to university. He now runs a multi-million-pound business. He's done 2 TED Talks by the age of 21, and there he is in the Telegraph. Teenager builds a £1 million firm in 6 months from his bedroom. He was doing conference calls with China before school. I used to go to a butcher's boy job when I was at that age. I was quite proud of that. I went to see Josh yesterday.
The world's changed. We need to find a way that education can change with it. We need to find out how we can bring relevance back to the education for our children, not just at degree level, not just at the point where we can look at work experience. We need to look back right at the beginning in primary school. That inspiration piece is missing. There's no longer anything that tells us, why does this work? How does this work? Nobody asks those questions anymore. We're all too busy. No one has enough time, not enough resource to do this. We need to step back. These aren't questions that require much time. They're not questions that require much money. They're ways of thinking about things, and this needs to filter back into education. This change, it's not going to come from education alone. It's going to come from the movements, the organisations like STEAMCO that they're helping rally the world. They're rallying designers, artists, people from government, from industry, because these are the people who understand what the world needs. They're the people who understand these changes, and they're the people making these changes happen. They're the people that need to inspire our children.
Out of interest, who feels positive about this? Not just because you've seen a few fluffy videos. Who feels positive at the moment in life about education and where it's going? Quite a few people. You're from Iceland, okay. Who feels a little bit middly? Hands up if you're a bit middly. Bit middly. Who feels downright negative about it? And I don't really want to go into a negative place. Okay, so there's an even spread. I'm feeling incredibly positive at the moment, and I'm really surprised by that after given what's going on and what's happened most recently. I was at the Houses of Parliament the other day for a launch of a report called Imagination by the Cultural Learning Alliance. That document, download it, it's packed full of evidence that creativity and the arts deliver uplift across the spectrum on academic achievement. This is not just arts and crafts for the sake of it. Get that document and take it to anybody you need to convince. That's Grayson Perry, by the way, look. I had a lovely chat with him, super chap. Another super chap is Matt Hancock, MP, who is the Minister for Digital Economy at the Department of Culture, Media and Sport, and I've seen him twice at events this week. He did an amazing talk, which is on our Twitter channel at the moment, where he was saying that we believe in art and creativity to drive the economy and to connect community. This is a current government minister saying this, and he genuinely means it. He says we have to take these arguments to head teachers to give them the support. Steve Williamson, the head teacher at Northern Saints Primary in Sunderland, who we've been doing some work with, said very clearly to me, it takes brave leadership. Ofsted are clear. They value creativity. Leaders have to be brave. They have to be supported by their teaching staff, by their colleagues. They have to be supported by the community. They have to be supported by business. They have to be supported by famous creatives. We've got SISSAY here today. Amazing support that we get from people like LEMN. We need this support to show people that this really is very serious. And one of the most exciting, one of the most positive things that's happened for a long time for me is the publication of this book. It was published last night at the British Library by Sir Peter Bazalgette, who's just stood down as Chairman of the Arts Council and is now going to become Chair of ITV. Peter Bazalgette brought Big Brother to the UK, Ready Steady Cook. He's one of the most successful TV business people in the history of the business in this country. He's been knighted for his services to broadcast. This book is called The Empathy Instinct, How to Create a More Civil Society. Who wants some of that? By a guy who can get people to, hundreds of millions of people to watch TV programs. When you've got people like that running the airwaves, you've got to feel positive. You really have got to feel positive. That's enough from me. You saw an amazing school there doing a STEAMCO day. I'm on a journey of serendipity here, on the sea of serendipity. And I emailed somebody the other week who I'd met at Google, at the Teach Meet Innovation Conference at Google, and she did an amazing talk about how she invests in the well-being of her staff. Invests. Some people will criticize that and say that's a waste of money. Well, no business person I know would see that as a waste of money. You invest in your staff, and your staff are invested in it, it ripples down. Can I have a big round of applause, please, for Alison here from the Mayor Trust? And her team. We're going to start the film now. It's an hour and a half. We're going to watch it straight. So if you could stand by with the lights in the corner there. We'll kill these lights at the front, I think.
When kids have that feeling, it's transformative for them. I made this, and everyone's coming to look at it.
A lot of bad language in that movie. A lot of bad language, I should apologise. Things like creativity, project-based learning, mindsets, absolute disgrace. There's one newspaper in the UK which I've got a lot of time, a lot of respect for. Shane, the publisher's here, and Laura's the editor of Schools Week. Can we have a big round of applause for Schools Week for the support?
I sat at the back with my head in my hands. This is not my kind of film. I actually found this quite challenging.
Who else have we got on the panel tonight? Alison, you're going to join us on the panel here?
In fact, Alison, it would be really helpful to start with you because you're a head teacher, and one of the things that came out in that was this idea that schools currently forget that they're full of humans. Ken Robinson said that a couple of times, and I wondered whether you thought that was correct.
No, I don't think it's correct at all. I think there are cases where there's a real danger of thinking that every school's the same, and there's a multitude of different types of schools and different types of personalities and all those sorts of things. But everyone I know of who's gone into teaching is because they're really interested in that human connection.
John Williams, the author of Screw Work, Break Free. I'll have some of that. That sounds fantastic. John, big round for John.
And I'm a big fan of science and people who can spell and construct a sentence correctly. So I still believe in all those traditional things. But I think the relentless testing and the focus on just cramming your head full of stuff that apparently falls out shortly afterwards is not a very good idea. And what's actually going to be needed is in a time when robots and AI and people in another country who are probably a bit more enthusiastic than you will do it for less money, then you need to be teaching something else. I mean, things that can't be replaced by technology are creativity, caring, initiative, collaboration.
Annie, the editor-in-chief of NETMUMS. Annie's here. Big round for Annie. We have got to get this conversation out of education echo chambers. That's preaching to the converted. Annie's here representing the mums.
I started watching the film thinking exactly that. Mums are going to throw their hands up in the air and be like, oh my God, no way, we're never going there. But actually, the more I watched it, the more I felt that it actually tapped into some of the themes that we see when we're talking about education on NETMUMS. The NETMUMS is the biggest parenting site in the UK. Education, interestingly, is one of the things they care about most and one of the topics where if we write about, we get the highest levels of engagement. So I think this film might actually tap into something quite fundamental in them, which is something that they can see in their own children, that the drive for stats and results and exam success isn't necessarily working on a very basic parent to child and family level.
Is Dominic here? Dominic WILCOX, big round for Dominic. One of our really, really generous creatives. He runs a project called Little Inventors. The United Nations have now picked up. He's taking that to countries around the world. Done amazing work with Dominic in Sundance.
I think some people believe that you're either born creative or not. So you've either got it or you're not. So you can actually leave it alone and teach the information. And then with the belief that at the end of the school, they've got all of the information and you're either creative or not. So the creative people will be able to use that information or not. But actually that's completely wrong. Creativity is a state of mind, it's a way of thinking, and it can be taught, and I know it because I'm doing it. And once you lose it, once you lose that way of thinking, of being creative by just learning the information, it's difficult to get it back.
Sophie. I've known Sophie and her husband Shane for several decades. She runs one of the coolest digital curation, creative leadership organisations in the world, if not in Shoreditch.
When I get applications for my company, I don't look at where they've been to university. I look at what they're passionate about and what they're doing with themselves. And I look for projects they've involved themselves in over and beyond what they've done at university.
And Madeline Holt. Madeline's a mum at my son's new school. Big round for Madeline. She's here representing more than a score. Madeline's a tireless campaigner for creativity and has been an amazing support over this.
More and more people that I know are saying, do you know what, I don't really care if my child doesn't go to university. There's no jobs, the stress is too great, the debt is too great. All I hope for is that my child comes out of education as a rounded, creative person who has not lost their marbles. Because, you know, I hear all the time about kids who are 14, 15, 16 who you think are really sane, and then suddenly overnight they lose it. And it's very, very troubling. And we see it now at primary school level. So I love the film.
I run 3 primary schools in Greenwich, but I'm a dad as well, so we do cross over. We're not just one or the other. And the thing we do in our schools is we're very passionate about sort of big outcomes, apprentice style. The whole topic will be something that they cannot do at the beginning of it. So, you know, the beginning of a year 4 topic might be to create their own restaurant evening. Or I'm sitting here watching this thinking, why don't we put on our own movie events or things like that? So you want them to have this stress, you want them to have the problems, and then you want them to learn to solve it. Because you're absolutely right. We have no idea what the jobs are going to be in the future, but if we're used to having to work our way around things, then that is sort of real creativity.
And I think there's another dichotomy in society that we now have, which is the sort of tiger mum and the overprotective parenting, where we don't want to see our children, in inverted commas, suffer. And we don't want to see them suffer for something that they're not passionate about, but the endurance that you gain from going through something like that is actually a massively important learning skill for life.
Creativity is not the monopoly of artists. It's available to everybody. A mother is creative in how she or her or a father solve a problem for their child. This programme, for me, was not about saying necessarily that the other system, whatever other systems are used, are bad. It is, in itself, an opportunity for us to take a good look at why creativity is important and what systems have we assumed that must be right because they are there and therefore we work within those structures. This allows us to be able to actually look at the structures that we've already we're in and see where the faults are, because there are faults. And I just want to just so that the argument is, the discussion is not binary, it's not them and us.
One of the things I want to do is to try and reconnect people with their purpose. And I think what was very hopeful about that film is it showed that it's possible to do that. And I think what really is very discouraging when I work with schools, it's sometimes the adults working with the children have lost their sense of purpose and therefore they're role modelling that as well. And I think, you know, whatever flaws we see in what High School High is doing, I think they very clearly are working out with the children what their sense of purpose is. And I think if we're sort of having AI and outsourced jobs snapping our heels, I think one of the things we need to do is work out how to be more human and how to work out how to educate for a life well lived, amongst other things. I think exams are part of that, but I think that sense of well-being and everything else needs to come back into education where it's been pushed out for a long time.
We are now at 9:30, and the teacher in me and the fact that I am in what is equivalent of an assembly hall is going to be quite strict on time. But I do want to leave you with me being slightly more perhaps look at this a bit left-wing minded, is I do want to just end on this Minister for Exams. I don't know if any of you have ever heard this poem before, but it was certainly in my teacher training. I am quite a big exam fan. You might have picked that up. But this has always stayed with me, and I think it probably blends together lots of what's been said here and lots of whatever side of this debate you're on, I think everyone can understand this. And I'm only going to read the end of this poem because the beginning sort of gives it away, but this bit is what it's called, the Minister for Exams, and it says, Question 3, why do snowflakes melt? I wrote, they melt because they fall onto the warm tongue of God. There were other questions. They were as simple. I described the grief of Adam when he was expelled from Eden. I wrote the exact weight of an elephant's dream. And yet today, many years later, for my living, I sweep the streets or clean the toilets of the fat hotels. Why? Because constantly I failed my exams. Why? Well, let me set the test. Question 1, how large is a child's imagination? Question 2, how shallow is the soul of the Minister for Exams? So if we can all go away at least agreeing on that one, and give a great big round of applause to our panellists.
Thank you very, very much. Give yourselves a big round of applause. Thank you.